Hi everyone, supply side policies are policies designed to increase the productive capacity of the economy and thus shifting LRAS to the right. And if these policies are successful, then all four main macroeconomic objectives will improve. This diagram shows you that. If these policies work in boosting LRAS, we can see the increase in growth rates. With that, we see reductions in unemployment. In fact, supply side policies target the types of unemployment in the natural rate, frictional and structural unemployment in particular. We see reductions in long-term rates of inflation, and from that we can deduce improvements in the current account position or trade position, now with exports being more competitive. So all sounds great, but we're going to learn later that there are some issues. We can evaluate supply side policies, but in theory anyway, they are perfect for the macroeconomic objectives. There are two groups of supply side policies: interventionist supply side policies and market-based supply side policies. They are fundamentally different policies but have the same end goal, i.e. they both try and increase LRAS and boost the productive capacity of the economy. But how they do that is very, very different. Interventionist supply side policies promote more of a role for the government in the economy to try and boost LRAS, whereas market-based supply side policies go completely the opposite way. Reduce the role of the government, take away the government from the operation of markets in the economy. Let markets be freer. That will boost efficiency, that will boost productivity, that will boost competition, that will promote the right incentives, and from that we will see a boost of LRAS. So now guys, let's go into the specific policies within these two groups. Before we look at these policies one by one, remember the three generic reasons why the LRAS curve will shift to the right. It could be an increase in the quantity of factors of production, an increase in the quality of factors of production, or an improvement in the productive efficiency in the economy. That's a reduction in long-run costs of production for businesses. So now let's go to our individual interventionist supply side policies. Remember, these are policies that promote more of a role of the government in the economy to boost LRAS. And you can see that all three are government spending dominated. Let's start with government spending on education and training. So this could be the government spending money to build new schools, to recruit more teachers, to train teachers better. Maybe it's curriculum reform, maybe it's adult training. These are all different examples, but all of these policies aim to boost skills of the workforce, improve the productivity of labor. That's an improvement in the quality of labor, and there's your shift of LRAS. Similarly, we can talk about government spending on healthcare as an interventionist supply side policy, which again aims to boost the productivity of the workforce, improving the quality of labor. Then we have government spending on infrastructure. We can look at this in two ways. First of all, by looking at transport infrastructure, either new transport infrastructure being built or maybe existing transport infrastructure being upgraded. So for example, newer upgraded roads, ports, airports, railway lines, bridges. That's the basic idea. And what that means is that long-run costs of production for businesses will fall. Why? Because it's easier and cheaper to access raw materials for businesses, and it's easier and cheaper to sell goods and services if transport infrastructure is better. And therefore, productive efficiency in the economy will rise. But also, if we add on not just transport infrastructure, but the building of schools and hospitals, for example, we could also say that new infrastructure or better infrastructure increases the quantity of the capital stock in the economy, thus increasing the quantity of capital, boosting LRAS that way. And our final interventionist supply side policy is subsidies given by the government to firms in order to promote investment. Remember, investment is when firms spend on capital goods. So these subsidies are there to target firms spending on R&D, for example, or buying new capital. Maybe it's upgrading capital, maybe it's new technology, factory expansion. You get the idea. It's got to be for investment. And we know that investment can increase the quantity of capital, the quality of capital, but also can reduce long-run costs of production for businesses and therefore shift LRAS that way. Now we go into our market-based supply side policies, and these policies aim to reduce the role of government in the economy, take away government from the functioning of markets and let markets be freer. And therefore we'll see LRAS shift. And we can look at market-based supply side policies in three different groups. We can have tax reform, labour market reform, and competition policy. Let's look at the specific policies within these little bands. Let's look at tax reforms as market-based supply side policies. We have lower income tax and we can have a lower corporation tax. Now hang on, the first five policies we've looked at all look like expansionary fiscal policies, don't they? So how come we can call them supply side policies as well? Well, it's all about the intention. If we're talking about these policies in order to boost LRAS, then they become supply side policies. Whereas if we're talking about these policies in order to boost AD, then they become expansionary fiscal policies. That's how you don't get confused, okay? So here we're linking to LRES, so they become supply side policies. So lower income tax. For those who are inactive, those who are outside the labour force, there is now an incentive for them to enter the labour force and become active. That increases the quantity of labour and boosts LRES. Similarly, for those who are in work, they have an incentive to work harder, be more productive, earn more income because they can keep more of it as disposable income. That could boost the quality of labour, the productivity of labour, and shift LRES. Lower corporation tax means firms have got more retained profits. They may use some of those profits for investment purposes, and we already know what investment does. It can increase all three here, the quantity and quality of capital. What about labour market reform? Well, there could be a reduction in benefits, in welfare payments, welfare benefits. And if that occurs, there is a very strong incentive for the economically inactive, those outside the labour force, to enter the labour force in order to find work. That will increase the quantity of labour, the size of the workforce, the size of the labour force, and boost LRES. And then we can look at these two together. A reduction in minimum wages and a reduction in trade union power. Both of these things, minimum wages and union power, drive up costs of production for businesses. So if we reduce minimum wages and reduce union power, it's going to reduce long-run costs of production for businesses, boost productive efficiency in the economy, and therefore boost LRES. And you can see how all of these are taking away the role of government in the economy, and that's why they're market-based supply-side policies. Then we have competition policies. All three of these, privatization, deregulation, and trade liberalization, in their own unique ways aim to boost competition across the economy. And if that happens, then firms have to reduce their long-run cost of production in order to be competitive, in order to survive in competitive markets. And that's going to improve the productive efficiency across the economy and boost LRES that way. So these are all the policies that we need to know inside out, how they boost LRES. What about looking at evaluating them now? Well, we love the theory that supply-side policies are perfect in improving all the four main macro objectives, but there are some major issues. One of the biggest issues is that there is no guarantee that they're going to work. There's no guarantee that government spending on education and training is going to boost the productivity of the workforce. There's no guarantee that subsidies to firms will be used for investment purposes. No guarantee lower corporation tax will lead to more investment. No guarantee that competition policies are actually going to boost competition. And therefore, they could well fail, these policies. And when we mix that together with point number two, and that is that a lot of these policies are very costly, there is a real risk, there's a real danger of wasteful spending on these supply-side policies, especially the interventionist supply-side policies. These are all very, very, very expensive. And we can also question then, how are these funded? And that raises other issues for the future, and also concerns about debt interest and the opportunity cost that comes with paying debt interest. But it's not just those three, even our tax reforms carry a significant cost. When we put the two together, it makes us really critique whether we should go ahead with certain supply-side policies. A lot of these supply-side policies carry very large time lags. Take government spending on infrastructure, for example. It could be many years, even decades, before an infrastructure project is completed. Government spending on education and training, it takes several years before we start seeing improvements in productivity as these children go through whatever changes are made to the education program. But even policies like our tax cuts over here have got significant time lags before we start seeing investment, or before we start seeing increases in the labour force because of lower income taxes. Some of our market-based supply-side policies come with quite severe negative stakeholder impacts. I mean, it's pretty obvious to see our labour market reforms seem very harsh. And for those especially on lower incomes, you could see the impact on living standards could be very severe for them if we see these labour market reforms take place. But even policies like deregulation, we can question what laws, what regulations are taken away or relaxed. Are they product safety laws? Are they environmental laws? Are they health and safety laws? Are they planning laws? Well, if that's true, then maybe the environment could be damaged very significantly. Maybe worker safety could be impacted. Maybe consumer safety could be impacted. Basically, these laws that are taken away or relaxed might not be in the interest of society and can harm some key stakeholders in the economy, which we don't want. The impact of supply-side policies in boosting growth very much depends on the size of the output gap and really what stage of the economic cycle the economy is in. If the economy is in a recession, supply-side policies really are going to be useless in boosting growth and doing all the great things that we mentioned here with the macro objectives. Whereas if the economy is booming and maybe at full employment, then yes, supply-side policies are going to be very effective and very healthy for the economy. And lastly, we need to talk about the need for targeted supply side policy. There are so many different types of policies that could be used, but they need to be used to target issues in the economy. So for example, if there are infrastructure problems, then yes, go for it, spend on infrastructure. If productivity is low, then target by using supply side policies that hit productivity. If competition is lacking, then yes, use supply side policies that target that. You see what I mean? We need to target our supply side policies to chronic supply side issues in the economy. So that covers some key evaluation. It tells you that supply side policies aren't perfect as they might seem. Make sure you take that all in, really important stuff right here, and I'll see you all in the next video.